Hello and welcome to Draft to Digital Self-Publishing Insiders. My name is Mark Leslie LaFave. I am the Director of Business Development for Draft to Digital, and I'm honored to have the cartoonist whose work I was inspired by to do that short, stupid dad joke video, Leigh Rubin. Leigh, welcome to the Draft Digital Studios.
Oh, hi, Mark. I think that was high art.
High art. Yeah, well, it was based on high art. So I'm going to pop up the cartoon again. So
Sure.
somebody had sent this to me because they said the person in the picture looked like me, right? Bald guy with a beard, that kind of thing going on. And I thought that was hilarious. And I think it was during the pandemic. And I was like, I'm just going to make a video version. And then I reached out to you and said, hey, is it okay if I'll include a link to your website, etc. But that's how we first met. But you, as I understand it, you're going to be celebrating 40 years as a cartoonist, right? Or have you already celebrated the 40th?
Well, I'm into it. The 40th actual anniversary will be in November 1st.
Oh man, this is amazing. So we're going to be talking about your latest book, which is out now. It's called Think Like a Cartoonist. I've got little showing up in a little
There it is
in the bottom there, but there's Think Like a Cartoonist. There's the book right there. I have it in my hot little hands.
Yeah, I got one.
And you have one in your hot little hands. Oh my God, hot hands! 2 books. It's like we planned this or something.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the beginning because I think there's a lot that writers can learn from the type of art and the type of creation that you do. But let's go back to the beginning for you. Where did it all start? Was it a comic you saw? Was it something funny? Like, how did you get into comedy and specifically into art?
Always wanted to be an artist of some sort since as far back as I can remember, kindergarten, and then all through, elementary, junior high, high school, college.
Yeah.
My dad read comics, huge comics fan. I think that was a huge influence. He had a wonderful sense of humor. And that's back in the day where people would gather around and read the comics together, if you believe that, newspapers and all that sort of thing. And it was fun because you could laugh together. It was family entertainment. And I worked for my dad from in high school. He had a print shop, and I knew mom and pop shop, and I knew I didn't want to continue in that business, although I was there for 20 plus years.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, I know, it was a long time. But in around 78, I was walking through a pharmacy and saw this row of greeting cards by Sandra Boynton, which were published by Recycled Paper Greetings, and they were called Animal Farm, and they were so just delightful, silly puns. And I thought, I'll start a greeting card line, having no idea what I was going to do. So I, made one, printed it up, put it on the counter of my dad's print shop, and some guy came in and bought it for 50 cents. And
wow,
all I need is a little encouragement.
Yeah. So wait, how old were you when you were doing this?
Young. Okay. I don't know, like 21.
Okay. All right.
I don't know,
But then it was a DIY ethic because obviously you had access to the raw materials. You had access to the raw materials to create it.
Very raw.
Remember what that first one was?
Yeah, it was a picture of a raccoon on a giant ear of corn, and the character was based on this little character that my dad taught us, my brother and sister and myself, to draw. So the raccoon is leaning over this huge ear of corn, and the inside of the card said, "I'd like to nibble on your ear." So
a little Valentine's Day.
Yeah, well, and some of them were a little naughtier than others.
Yeah.
There was a dog in a burlap sack. I'll leave that to your imagination. That one. But there were also, all sorts of fun ones. So then I thought, I came up with a line of about 24 and then 48, but I needed racks. So I had to, this is pre-internet.
Yeah.
Well, I went to a trade show and talked to a sales rep, and they go, well, okay, here's how you do it. And if you want to do it, we can represent you at the National Stationery Show in New York, if you'd like, in 1979. I forget when it was. But so I guess they had no idea I was actually going to follow through on this. Saw these big spinner racks made, some guy in Pasadena, California. I don't even remember how I found the guy.
Wow.
But so they took me to New York, and I sold a whole bunch of like a whole bunch of stores bought it. And I was surprised because then, I have to gear up for production now because this is way more than my dad's print shop could handle.
Oh, really? Like that the volume was that high? It
Well,
wasn't
you know,
just
if a
like
store of like a retail like a stationary chain of 20 or 25 stores orders, like there's no way we can print them on these little offset duplicators.
oh,
They're take
wow.
forever.
Wow.
So I had to find a commercial printer that wasn't too far. So pretty close by this is in the San Fernando Valley, right side of outside of LA. Big,
Wow.
So there wasn't a lack of printers. But again, this is all pre-internet. So it's like figuring all this out, with phone books. And that,
Wow, what are those?
yeah, well, you
Yeah.
sit on you sit on them when you're a little kid, when you're
Oh,
too
I see. So
short.
you can reach the table better.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So, but I was thinking when you said you went to a trade show, I thought maybe there was going to be somebody who managed a store, a single store, went in and bought them. And you're like, okay, 10, no problem. You want 10 of this, 10 of that, 10 of the other. But you're talking to a chain. So your magnitude of scale was dramatic at a time, just to reiterate, where you couldn't just Google it and find a YouTube video, right?
No, no,
Wow.
it wasn't available. So yeah, you just figure it out. It's amazing what you can figure out in the old days. People, sure, they went around the world in old ships without, GPS.
Apparently they did. So you found a local print shop, but obviously I'm assuming that your background working at your dad's print shop probably gave you a bit of an idea of what was going to be involved, just at a different scale.
Well, yeah, much bigger. I mean, I had the idea I could make prototypes, so there's no way I could make the volume. But mom and dad's shop, you just do whatever. You sweep the floor, you run the press, you do layouts, you do paste up, you deal with customers. My brother and I had a joke like they come in for our snappy uniforms, which we were teenagers with ink covered, just we did not have uniforms. We were anything but a corporate entity.
Right, right. So the greeting cards, that was that first step.
Right.
At what point did that transition into what we now know as Rube's
Well,
cartoons?
I was kind of getting burnt out. I was doing a lot of this work myself. My mom was helping me, which is great, but still all that shipping and this and that. And
Yeah.
I'm still working a full-time job. And I don't know how I came up with this idea, but I took the idea of that little character that was the star of all the greeting cards, as different animals or whatever.
Yeah.
And I made it into a musical note. And I shrink wrapped and did these prints and started doing street fairs with these prints of musical
Okay.
notes. I called them notable quotes, and they were all silly musical puns.
Okay.
And people just love them. It was just unbelievable. Like, wow, people are really laughing at these. And then someone came up to me at one of these shows and said, you should do a book of those. Well, I only had 12. So I bought a musical dictionary, went home, came up with, went back to our apartment and then, kept reading, okay, I can come up with this pun. I don't read music. But it had to be, so enough for anybody could get them. Came up with enough. But then I had to find a commercial printer to print in the volume you need. It wasn't print on demand then. And the lowest amount of books you could print was 5,000 to get the scale right.
5,000.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You had to have a big basement or a big trunk, right?
My parents' house, I'm not sure they were thrilled with this idea. They admired my industriousness.
Of course. Yeah. Well, hey, you're starting a business like they had, like your dad had, right?
Yeah, and like his dad had before him. So it was, yeah.
Wow.
So what I had to do was figure out how to get rid of these 5,000 books. Fortunately, I had those sales reps from before, and
Okay.
I gave those the books. And then I found some people to make mugs, and we printed notepads ourselves. And so there was a little line of these musical note things, and I sold that. I went around all the B. Dalton Walden books. I don't know if those are in Canada as well, but they got bought out by Barnes and Noble and Borders, but they were in every mall. Every mall had at least 2 bookstores back in the glory days of the late 70s and into the 80s. And I managed to sell those first 5,000 in 6 months.
Wow.
And it went on to 8 printings.
Really?
Yeah, so I just kept there's a few in the garage left in case anybody's interested.
Well,
Then
people can
I
still
also
buy them then from you.
pardon?
They can buy them from you?
If you want to email me, we'll figure it out. Yeah, sure.
There's the
Yeah, so I
URL
mean,
from your website right there.
yeah, well, I don't. If you Google, they're probably on eBay too. There's
Yeah,
some weird odd stuff, but from that book, I did a book signing at Walden Books in Lancaster, California. I had moved to Palmdale. My wife got a job teaching elementary school out in the Antelope Valley, which is northeast of Los Angeles. And I met another author there who went on to pretty good success with his work. But the local newspaper, the Antelope Valley Press, had an entertainment editor, and we became friends. And we'd go out and have beer, as one does back in the day when you could do that. I mean, I guess you can now. But and he asked, "How'd you like to do a daily cartoon for our newspaper?" And I thought, "Wow, this is great. That's what I want to do." And it was a 4-day-a-week paper, but this paper had a lock on the Antelope Valley. I mean, there was no competing papers until not much longer than the LA Times, LA Daily News kind of moved in, but still they did not get but because of that pressure, the publisher of the Antelope Valley Press poured a bunch of money in, and it was the glory days of newspaper where, it was like, I had a newspaper editor once say, used to be having newspapers like having a license to print money.
Yeah.
That's not so much the case anymore, as you may have noticed. So November 1st, 1984, I started drawing I started publishing, and it's the Daily Rubes, and ever since.
Wow. And was it the Daily Rubes? Was it Rubes from the beginning?
Yeah, because Garfield was taken.
Okay, fair enough. And so 40 years this November, celebrating that, but you ended up doing some other publishing, not just the merchandise and the cards and the notebooks and stuff like that, right? I know obviously we're going to be talking about your latest, I Think Like a Cartoonist, but what came before that?
First book was Notable Quotes, and then the next one was a terrible book that, thank God, accidentally most of them got pulped, called Sharks Are People Too. Good luck finding that one, folks.
Oh,
I have a few copies, but they ain't leaving my garage. Then I did a second volume of Notable Quotes called Encore, and then a third one called Amusing Arrangements. Notice the musical theme.
Yeah.
Each one of those actually went into multiple printings, and I was all self-publishing these at the time.
Oh, wow.
Which was pretty cool. Where did it go from there? Well, then I was really working on doing the dailies and dealing with, rejection after rejection from, newspaper syndicates and newspapers themselves, but still finding some success picking up more newspapers. And this is in the day where you had to make long distance calls cost money.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And again, there was no internet.
Yeah.
So I would go down to the Van Nuys library on my Honda 750 and get a list of whatever I could get of all these newspapers, college newspapers, regular newspapers. And my dad was a very gracious boss. As long as I got the work done and I paid for my long distance bill, I could do as much as I wanted.
Wow.
And I, could do print my own promotion. And I would call newspapers first and say, "Hey, I've got this stuff. Do you want to see it? If you want to see it, I'll send you the promotion." I mailed it out to them. There was a little return card with a little cartoon on it, like "Leave me alone," or "Yeah, I'd like to see more," or whatever it was. And it really said stuff like that on there. I'm trying to be funny. And that's when I really started to pick up a lot of college newspapers. They were much easier to sell.
Right.
Back then, editors came and went pretty fast. So you had to keep reselling every semester or year.
Right. Yeah, it's true, because the turnover would have been pretty high. Yeah.
I mean, every college had their newspapers, and I got into like about 140 of them in about a year and a half.
Wow. Okay.
Over and over. I was still working a full-time job though. So.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so was this they were weekly? I remember my college newspaper was weekly rather than daily. Is that what it was?
Some were weekly, some were daily, like Columbia University or UCLA or USC or
Right.
MIT. All of these ran my cartoons, which was terrific. A lot of them were daily, some or 5 days a week, because they
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, yeah, yeah.
publish weekend, but a lot were maybe 2 days a week, or for sure 1 day a week. Uh, and I
Wow.
started to pick up other regular dailies. Editor and publisher ran a nice little blurb, and people saw that and actually would call me or write to me about it. But again, I was still getting all these reject letters.
Yeah, yeah.
But I learned one thing from always be nice to the receptionist, the gatekeeper, and I always was. And this one receptionist, or whoever it was, assistant to somebody at one of the Cincinnati newspapers, hey, can I talk to the editor? No, he's not available now, but have you heard about this new syndicate in Los Angeles called Creators Syndicate? And I had not, because there was no internet, and what do I know? I mean, King Features or United or Andrews and McMeel, all the big ones, Tribune
Yeah.
at the time. And so I looked them up, wrote to them, got the typical reject letter from Rick Newcomb, who, by the way, story is in the book of how he started Creators Syndicate.
Oh my God! Wow.
We are still friends to this day. Then I took that same reject, that package, put a new letter on it, sent it to the LA Times Syndicate. They considered it for a while and rejected it. So I put another letter on that and sent it back to Creators Syndicate. And then I got a call from a lovely person named Anita at Creators Syndicate as I was leaving my dad's office one day to go to a dental appointment. And she goes, "Hey, Lee, we got your package. We really love your work. Don't sign with anybody else." As if there was a line of people waiting to sign me up. And I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was like, because just to give you context, syndicates were very selective about who they picked.
Yeah.
And they would get thousands of submissions a year. All the syndicates did. And I mean, they had to, it was a lottery, and this is not a guarantee of wealth. It's a guarantee that they're going to put everything they can into something, and then maybe it will sell, because a lot of cartoons don't make it, or columns,
Right.
or whatever. So I feel very fortunate.
Does it work that they have stuff available in the syndicate, and then those dailies decide they're going to draw from that? Is that how that works?
Explain that.
So you've provided your content. They bring you into the syndicate. Does that mean that means that each paper still has to pick what they're going to pull from the syndicate selection, right?
Yeah, this Creators had a number of, I think they have like 100 features or so now. I don't even remember, but at the time they had like BC and Wizard of Viz and Ann Landers and all these, so many features that you would know, plus puzzles. And this is well before Sudoku. How do you say that? I know, whatever they are, but editorial cartoonists, editorial writers.
Right.
Rick was very smart. He got left and right. Conservative, because papers buy these things, or they did.
Yeah.
Then, and it was so I was among some real stars, and they had to the salesmen went out, or saleswomen or people went out and had to sell it to every single different newspaper.
Wow.
It's a business like anything else.
Yeah, and I want to get into, so doing daily cartoons, and you're going to be celebrating 40 years. Do you actually, I mean, it's daily, so it seems like it's intuitive, but do you actually have to create a new cartoon every day? Or do you stockpile, or how does that work?
Well, I got this huge, it's like the Fort Knox of cartoons. No, I don't stockpile. And yes, I have to do it 7 days a week. I do get vacation time should I decide to take it. But I also like to stay, if I'm not creative, if I'm not creating, I'm not living. I have to be creative in some way,
right,
every day, and whether I draw that day, or if I have to do 2 another day to make up for it, or whatever I need to do. I work on other little projects here and there too, but I need to stay focused, and I like to, so I don't get rusty in the head.
Yeah, okay, I see that. And then I imagine there's lots of cartoons that maybe don't make it, that, you know, your first draft, or something, and you're like, "Okay,
How high is that pile over there?
okay, okay." So there's a story about Stephen King, taking a manuscript because it bothered him so much, a horror novel, Pet Sematary, because it was one of the worst things he could ever think of, and he threw it in the trash, but unfortunately, stuff happened. He had a deadline, Tabitha pulled it out of the trash so he could meet his contract, and that was does that ever happen where you're like, "Yeah, this one I gotta bring it back," or is just the new content's coming so rapidly that you never have to look at that?
Oh god, I wish it came really that rapidly. Um, Occasionally, every few years, I'll leaf through that, and I'll find something, "Hey, that wasn't so far off," and I'll just tweak it, and it'll work really well. If not, I use the other side for sketching and coming up with other ideas. You don't wanna
Yeah.
waste paper, it's expensive paper.
Yeah, yeah. So the logistics of it, when we see your cartoon, like a lot of us now may see them shared as memes online, and just for the sake of giving you a little bit more love, and people probably recognize this, is you've got these are just some samples of some of your cartoons. Obviously, this Shakespeare brevity is the soul of wit. Just love that one. That's a fantastic one. Very writer related, which is why I picked these.
Well,
And then, of course, the other one where it's congratulations. It's a bottle with a note. Congratulations, we reviewed your manuscript and wish to publish your incredible tale of survival. And of course, by the time that comes back from the publisher, we all understand how this feels.
yep, yep.
That's the poor guy is dead on on the island. Anyway, so when we see these cartoons in a newspaper,
Mhm.
they're what, a couple inches across, right? A couple inches squared.
Yeah, 2 by 3 or 3 by 4 or whatever
Yeah.
they are, yeah.
But they're not drawn that way. You actually they're drawn in a much larger size, correct?
8 by 9 is the box.
Okay. Wow.
It
And so the envelopes that you're mailing are going to be big envelopes that you would have been mailing to publishers. But that's probably changed with technology though, right?
Oh, it's so much better now. You know, it gets expensive mailing that stuff in either
Yeah.
UPS or FedEx, forget it.
Yeah.
Now it's like scan them, clean them up, press the button, send them to your editor.
So
Editor
is that
sends
what
them.
happens now? So you finish a cartoon today, or if you have already or not? I know you're in Pacific time, so it's earlier in the day for you. You got lots of time. But then you finish it, scan it, or actually, I'm gonna pop up a comment from somebody in the audience here
Sure.
named Teresa. You may know
Oh.
Teresa.
Oh,
He's my
stop it.
husband. She says it's wonderful. Of course, it's wonderful being married to you. But do you
Thank
have
you,
a
honey.
first reader or someone who takes a look at your stuff before it gets sent off?
Yeah, the lady that's on the screen. If she says it's sick, I gets published. If she says it's cute, forget it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's so you finish it, you get approval from a first reader, like that.
If I have doubt about something or if I want to like tweak it or make it better, I have my former editor at Creators, a guy named
Okay.
David, who now lives. He's an independent editor now. He is honest, in the most wonderful way. Or it goes, you know, it could be funnier,
Yeah.
or and it's like he doesn't say, well, that sucks. He's never like that, but or I don't get it. And that's what I want to hear is if
Yeah.
someone else isn't getting, someone that is very familiar with how I think and how the voice of the characters in the cartoon, I want them to know. My current editor is also very, very good. She's very young to me. They all are. She's like as young as I was when I started with Creator Syndicate. I think it was, well, she may not even be that old,
Wow.
but she gets it, which is terrific. And I have a few other, a couple other trusted eyes, 4 other eyes, maybe 5 or 6 other eyes
Wow.
that "Hey, is this working for you? Is this clear? Am I
Yeah.
like completely off base here?" 'Cause
Right, right.
I like abstract art as much as the next person that likes abstract art. If you go off, you can't go too far off, off
Yeah.
the La La Land or like, what is that?
So speaking of La La Land or the fictional realities, is the cover of Think Like a Cartoonist. Cover of Think Like a Cartoonist has, rabbits taking pictures of one another, and then of course the one rabbit's doing the bunny ears, haha, behind the other one. You do use animals a lot. So let's talk a little bit about the leveraging that anthropomorphic use of animals
Right.
in human type situations.
Sure. Animals are great stand-ins for people. You can get away with a lot more with animals. Take, for example, the cow. You can't really show the memories of people in daily cartoons, yet others are perfectly acceptable.
They're utterly acceptable.
They
Yeah.
are, yes,
Yeah.
thank you for so yeah, I mean, that's just one example, but if I just drew people all the time, how boring would that be? I mean, you got a whole world of creatures, and I've loved drawing animals since I was a little kid. So, whatever it takes. By the way, I'm so glad the publisher suggested using that cartoon, because there was another piece of art that is in the book that I thought, oh, that's a way better. Now, and you go, well, this one's pretty known. Yeah, you're okay. You're right. Let's do it. But I really like the other one. I think it's in the guy blowing the bubble gum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So let's get into the details of the book. So it's called Think Like a Cartoonist,
mhm.
a celebration of humor and creativity by Leigh Rubin and friends. Can you talk a little bit about, so how did this book come about, and how did you get to invite so many friends like that? Let's talk about the creative process for making this book happen.
Someone should have warned me about this before I got into this project. So in 2018, I was asked and honored to be would I be the cartoonist-in-residence at Rochester Institute of Technology, which is fabulous, by the way. If you've noticed, I have my RIT shirt on again.
Oh yeah.
So the dean of liberal arts at the time brought me in, and I was able to lecture and speak to a bunch of classes, talk about creativity and the business, because there's 9 or maybe 10 colleges on the campus now. There's a lot of new buildings there, so it's hard to keep track. But it was this wonderful experience of interacting with students and faculty and staff. And I did a big piece of art, a big mural for them to kind of celebrate all the colleges that were there. But I thought I'd like to do something a little more in depth. I don't want to do a cartoon collection because, yeah, they're great for bathrooms and coffee tables, but something that speaks to what is it about creativity and something that would be useful. So I met with the publisher there through the dean brought me in, and one of the other professors, and I came up with, here I have all these thoughts that I've been doing all these years, put them in a book in some sort of format. And he was very smart. He's very smart. And he said, what, you could get a lot of stories if I have a journalist to go out and gather stories from other people, how they were creative, how they connected the dots or solved a problem or came up with a piece of art, something unusual, different, just any way to think differently. I'm going to use the outside of the box, whatever metaphor, but you know what I mean? Something different, which is kind of like what I do every day. It's you got to think something different. You got to come up with something different. What am I going to do? I'm scrambling for an idea. And, you go to, Silicon Valley, all these guys came up with weird ideas at a different time, or, any like scientific thing. It's like, I stumbled into something by accident, but you connect some weird dot somehow. There's a weird dot connecting that goes on.
Yeah.
Now, this is fall of 2019, October to be precise. You might remember what came right after that.
Halloween.
Well,
came right after October.
That is true. It came right after that, and then some news stories came in about this disease that was happening. So,
wow.
Yeah, and so there was no budget for this. There was no budget for me to hire a journalist. There was no budget at all. So I became that journalist. And one of the rules, I developed the rules of engagement for the book. And I have a friend of mine that I said, hey, a buddy, one of my oldest friends I've known since elementary school. We went on a road trip, and we're on this road trip. His name is Rick Rittenberg, and his story is fabulous, and it's in that book. And I said, Rick, would you be my guinea pig for this book? And he's a retired geologist now, but he's had a very interesting career.
Okay.
and the story he put together was wonderful. So I used that as a template to approach other people.
Okay.
But one of the rules was there had to be some connecting of dots.
Okay.
B, I had to know everybody personally in this book.
Okay.
There was
Wow.
no, and there's only one person I haven't met in person, but I know her family, and she lives in Hawaii, and
Right.
she didn't invite me over, so I had to do this by phone.
She
Would have
wasn't
been
going to
nice.
fly
I'd
you
be
in on
happy.
board jet, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta do research and
yeah.
in person. So I reached out to about 150 people,
Okay.
some of whom seem to have forgotten who I was now. I mean, like not like like who or ghosted me or whatever. It was kind of anyway.
Yeah.
I got about 100 people contributed. Unfortunately, I did not have the say in what got in.
Oh,
The
okay.
editor or the director of the press at the time. The book is published by RIT Press, which is
Yeah.
connected with the university.
Right.
He's a fabulous judge of what to go in the
Yeah.
book. The really painful part of this was calling people that submitted, and I had to tell them they didn't get in. I hated that part.
Well,
Having been
especially
on
when
the
you
end,
weren't the one deciding it. Oh, that might have made it easier because you weren't
yeah,
the
but
one
still,
deciding.
a husband
Yeah.
and a wife or a girlfriend and boyfriend would both submit stories, and only one of them would get in.
Oh,
That's
yeah, that's gotta be
not a
tough.
fun.
Wow.
My wife, who still loves me, apparently, her story did not get in, and I have to live with her.
Oh, man, that's not fun.
Volume 2.
Yeah,
So,
but the book is dedicated to her.
yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Saved her.
I know what time my bread is buttered on here. Come on. So with each story, I had a cartoon to go with it. Originally, I was going to create a brand new cartoon. I thought this is already an exhausting task where I phone called everybody to see if they were interested. And then
Yeah.
I emailed them all the how to do this, the format with samples of, like 3 or
Yeah,
4 of them.
yeah.
And I wrote a number of chapters too, and half of them got cut, by the way. So,
Oh, you even had to reject your own. You had to call yourself up and go, "Okay, listen, Lee." Okay.
you do the Charlie Brown walk,
Yeah,
with the head.
yeah.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
And so this was a 4-year project.
Wow.
I mean, I'm just like, is it ever gonna like end? And
Yeah.
it finally it went the way I look at it, it went through what was it? It took 4 years,
Yeah.
3 different managing editors because the original managing editor retired. They
Oh,
had an
wow.
interim managing editor who was on for 6 months, and the current managing editor, the original director who did all that original selecting of the stories, and then the now there's an interim because he's shifted positions there. So it made it through what 4 years, 3 managing editors, 2 directors of the press, and 1 pandemic,
Yeah, global
and
pandemic,
it
yeah.
still made it
Wow.
to
Wow,
to
that's
the end.
amazing.
So, yeah.
It's quite the project. I kind of think it's kind of interesting that there's a bit of a parallel with the fact that when you were working selling your cartoons to college papers, there was turnover. You had to like kind of
Oh,
so
yeah, I
that
didn't,
probably like because every time a new managing editor comes in, that may mean the end of the project, right?
well, it can, but all of them, I mean, they can't all be fooled. I'm not that great of a salesman. You're like, here it is. I mean, and then my high involvement, and there's editing, and the first editor, the first director, was very, very. I mean, he didn't mince words. If he didn't like something, I wrote. So I rewrote stuff a lot of times,
Right,
which was
right.
good because
Yeah,
it creates a better piece to read, much more readable
yeah,
book. I mean, I love how it turned out in the layout. We have, they hired a
yeah.
really terrific book designer and a guy named Eric Wilder. Thanks, Eric,
Okay.
for that.
So you talked about the editor wanting to use the cartoon of the rabbits on the cover instead of the Buddha blowing bubblegum. Um, and then there's cartoons throughout the book. How did that work out in terms of? I mean, obviously, you had a layout artist who was doing something, but did you like read the essays and think like this is applicable? I'm going to put this together, and that's where that started. And then obviously it was a collaborative effort from that point on.
I found I have 14 to 15,000 cartoons.
Okay.
I got something that fits just about anything.
Okay.
And if I had to tweak it a bit, I tweaked it a bit.
Okay.
Essentially, and there's some photos in there, and there's some other cartoonists that contributed from
Yeah.
some crazy adventures that we had together. Yeah, but but the bulk of them are, just cartoons that I have done. There was one I specifically created, and there's a weird drawing in the back which was suggested early on by the book designer. It's one of those. It's like an old timey drawing. I can't think of where the different parts of the brain or yes, it's only in this book.
Oh, wow.
And it has to deal with the 5 senses, and you notice the biggest sense is the sense of humor.
Humor, of course.
Which is the one I think that we need I don't know if it's the most, but it's the one that works really good in interpersonal relationships. All the other stuff is great, but humor is essential to a good life.
Wow. So you alluded to the fact that you love drawing cows, and we referenced music quite a bit. You have an essay in the book called Moose and Music. Was it specifically written for this book? And can you elaborate a little bit on what people would find in that particular essay? Because it also has a bunch of sort of formative sketches as well as art.
Oh, okay. So one of my sons worked for a local guitar manufacturer. And he sent me a video of how they make guitars, boutique guitar, very nice on high-end electrics. And I'm watching, this is really fascinating, because I'm always interested in the process, the creative process about it, from design to finish. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, wow, the guitar looks like a cow. And as it turns out, those things on the electric guitar, they're called the horns, which I didn't know. I should know this. My brother is a professional musician, and he's got a ton of guitars. And like, why didn't I know this? I just didn't. So I quick grabbed an envelope. There's some old bill envelope, I sketched out what it would look like. And then I was doing a trade show in Wisconsin every year called the World Dairy Expo, where a lot of agricultural newspapers or publications publish my work. And I wanted something special. I thought, what if I bring a really cool electric guitar there? That'd be awesome. I don't know how to play, but there are guitar players there. And, maybe they kind of. So this went through a lot of iterations of how could I get this guitar? And, it's a whole story of how the guitar went from start to finish. And I hope you like the photos and all that, because that was a lot of fun. I still have, there were 3 of these guitars made. It ended up through a friend of mine that is in a local band, knew the head designer at Ernie Ball, which you may or may not know of that name, but they're big on guitar strings and make high-end, really nice electric guitars, basses, and they agreed to make this guitar for me, provide me with, if I would paint it and do everything, the front looks like a cow and the back looks like the back of a cow. Yeah. So there it is. And this model was actually the original Ernie Ball, Eddie Van Halen model when he was, sponsored by Ernie Ball. It's now called something else, and maybe they changed the design. But it was just a blast. And the agreement was I made one for me if I would make one for them. So in their vault of all their very expensive guitars is the only other fully assembled cow guitar. There was a guy in the Midwest that sent me a blank of another manufacturer some years later that I painted one for.
Wow.
It's a very labor-intensive
I can imagine.
process.
So, wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure, it's beautiful. It's
all these collectibles we're hearing about that people the collectors can go after. So, well, I'm going to start off with the question that Jim asked in the comments. Jim Azevedo said, "Hi, Leigh. Do you feel creativity is bludgeoned out of most people through school or work, or do you feel it's a choice?"
Well, for me, it's not a choice. It's a must. I have heard this before, and I think if it it's really depends on the individual, how much of your desire is to be creative. I mean, it's not like you have to make your living at it. If people are creative in so many ways, whether it could be gardening or just whatever it is in your home, or, home decorating, or making clothes a certain way. I mean, artisans and artists are very, it's kind of almost infinite how you can do it. When I see the art students at RIT, medical illustration, where it has to be so precise and technical, like you go to your doctor's office and see all those, you know, the cutaways of your body. To me, which I didn't know was even a profession, now I know. To just fine arts.
Yeah.
It's so wide and varied. These students don't have it beat out of them, or they're really they know how to do it, and they're taught by just fabulous professors. I know I sound like I'm doing a commercial, but I mean, it's my experience. I've seen them in work as I talk to their classrooms and I see their art, and it's very inspirational. And these are all 18 to 22-year olds, so it depends again on where you work, and find an outlet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So as we get close to the end of the interview, any advice you would offer? I mean, you're about to celebrate your 40th anniversary of doing something you absolutely love,
You
and
keep reminding me of this. I'm feeling kind of old.
sorry. I think about this. You've got to make people laugh. You've got to create something fun, and then grab pieces of envelopes and scratch down little ideas, and you've got thousands of unused ones. But just advice for somebody who is creative as a writer or cartoonist or humorist or whatever. Any advice that you would have for longevity in the business?
Well, just don't stop doing it. And these days, if you want to be seen, it is the competition is there's so much stuff on like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and every other platform you can think of, but it's a wide open world now where before it wasn't. Yeah, it was very. You'd have to really figure it out, and now it's like, well, I could post anything I want anywhere I want, and you'll find out soon enough if you develop an audience. And there's much smarter people than me figuring out how to use social media to get the word out. Well, kind of like you, but I mean, in some younger artists have massive followings. That like I can learn from them a lot.
Yeah. Of course. Awesome. Sure. As we all learn from one another, that's part of the creative world.
That's right.
Yeah. Awesome. So
wise words.
Yeah. Leigh, where can people find out more about you online? Check out your new book. Check out all the cool things that is Leigh Rubin.
RubesCartoons.com. We're right there. RubesCartoons.com. And at Rubes Cartoons is my social media handle for Facebook, Instagram, awesome. LinkedIn, Twitter, X,
all
Twitter
the places. X. Yeah.
Yeah.
So look for at Rubes Cartoons. Do follow Leigh online. You will not be disappointed. You will be amused, entertained, and inspired. Leigh, thank you for entertaining and inspiring and informing us for the last 45 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. And I want to thank Leigh for being here today. I want to thank you guys for watching the show. If I'd love if you could like, share, comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of these. And if you don't want to miss them, be sure to bookmark d2dlive.com. We come at you every week, Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern. And if you are an author and you're looking to get your work into the world and use the free tools and resources for digital publishing, you can create a free account over at draft2digital.com. Again, my name is Mark Leslie Lefebvre. I was honored to have Leigh Rubin in the studio with me from Rubes Cartoons. Leigh, thanks again for joining me. And everyone have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created D2D Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draftedigital.com.